Black Hills Information Security, the leaders in penetration testing and active defense. Email consulting@blackhillsinfosec.com to request a quote today. Threat Connect is the industry's most widely adopted threat intelligence platform, built to unite the people, processes, and technologies across your security team, your organization, and your entire ecosystem of partners. Threat Connect's threat intelligence platform enables your team to collaborate, analyze, and make sense of threat data all in one place. Empower your team towards fast and efficient analysis that leads to decisive action. Transform your entire threat detection and response program today. Claim your free account at threatconnect.com/securityweekly. Endgame automates the hunt for both known and never-before-seen adversaries and enterprise networks. Built on unique knowledge of the adversary's tools, techniques, and tactics, Endgame's centrally managed agent prevents, detects, and responds to advanced adversaries at the earliest stages of the kill chain without prior knowledge. Endgame, automate the hunt. Welcome back, everyone, to Security Weekly. This is a listener feedback segment. I do want to front end this segment a little bit with Ross and I were talking before the show. We were kind of nerding out over the new Bose Quiet Comfort 35 Bluetooth wireless noise-canceling headphones. I bit the bullet and bought a pair because it promised that it would pair with my computer and pair with my phone simultaneously. Well, not simultaneously, but switch between them. Like it can only be paired to one thing.
Two techs at once, Paul? No.
It was, and I tell you what, I didn't really want to spend the money on it, but I'm like, if it solves that problem, that I'm working at my desk and I get a call and I can take the call. Like a missed call for me could have impacts, right?
Great, yeah.
And I wanted something really comfortable to wear. I wanted to be able to take a call on my phone and talk to someone on a conference call, and then I wanted to be able to take a call, like a GoToMeeting or a Skype call, and not have to keep switching headphones like I was doing. And I wanted to block out external noise because the furnace is actually in a closet in my office, and it's kind of loud. And the guys like to play music and be loud. I want them to play music and be loud. I don't want to be like the dad boss, be like, keep it down in here, son, right? Like I want them to do their thing, but when I needed my quiet time, and so it like solved all those problems. Speaking of like what problem you're trying to solve, like it solved all those problems for me, and I was actually really impressed.
And I mean, I would say only $350, but as somebody who has a budget for finance, for development and research, I mean, this is okay for me. Other people it might not be okay for. I came from, I told you, Paul, I came from Quiet Comfort 15s, which were the wired, and those were great and everything, and I loved them, and that's what turned me on to these. But I had experience with wireless headsets before, and I was disappointed, and so this weekend I literally was like, all right, well, I have an extra few $100s to spend. Let's go check it out, and I have to tell you, I'll give it 9.5 out of 10 stars.
Yeah, that's my rating too.
Almost 10, but I only had them for 4 days now, so maybe 10 in next week.
The audio gets kind of wonky, like when it pairs to those multiple things. Like sometimes it gets like that, like McDonald's.
Oh, the feedback. Yeah.
You kind of get that. Like,
I got that too. Yeah.
But you like fries with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
But they talk to you. So like when you turn them on,
it tells you your percentage and stuff.
It's like it's the battery is 90%, and I'm paired to Paul's computer and Paul's phone, and they can read you the name of the
But the problem is if you have a really long computer name, then you're sitting through like War and Peace, and then if you have two devices that have really long computer names.
Renamed my computer to Paul is Awesome and my phone to Paul's the Man. So every morning when I put my headphones on, it gives me some encouragement.
I tried to get Siri to call me Italian love stallion god, but she wouldn't say it. She just kept saying no, F you.
That's because Siri's a bitch.
Siri is a bitch.
She is.
She's listening right now.
She's pissed off.
Actually,
I've deleted your phone book.
Because, and speaking of tech, on the new iPhone 7, this is iPhone 7 Plus 256, the great thing with iOS 10,
so you just got like money to burn, Russell, huh?
I love toys. I love toys.
He does.
And wait till our segment on teledildonics. And
can't wait.
But now remember when you used to have to have this plugged in, and you would have to say, "Hey Siri." Now see, she went off, and now you could she's voice activated literally all the time.
Yeah. But my thing is, why haven't they done that in the new macOS Sierra?
They have.
Because I thought you had to click on the. I was reading some things that you had to click on the thing.
You have to enable it.
You have to enable it.
Oh.
If you enable it, then she's listening all the time.
It's called active listening. Well, it's like Cortana, right?
I was kind of afraid to do that. Yeah, actually,
it's just like it's like HAL, and there's like a little red light over there.
So you're not an Apple fanboy or anything, right?
Nah. You get the watch.
But the thing is now they have this interesting feature with OS 10 is they have the selective listening. So no matter what device you're on, whichever heard you the loudest, so to speak, and I'm paraphrasing here, is the one that takes the request. This the Apple Watch Siri operates much slower than she does on my new iPhone 7 Plus, right? So when I say, "Hey Siri," the Apple Watch, if it's listening here, will come up, but it takes her a half hour to give me the directions to where I'm going. Whereas I just like shut up, and then do this.
The phone takes over.
Yeah, I'd rather have the phone take over, or my MacBook Pro. So whichever. Again,
I just realized that Apple needs to explain this as we now have selective listening. Parents of children, this is what your kids do. Our devices do it now too.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, instead of active listening, it's selective listening.
Selective listening. Yeah. Husbands have been practicing this for centuries.
That's right. Yeah.
I get accused of it all the time.
What? Oh. Listener feedback. Our listener Kevin writes in. His first thing is about we're talking about Responder. It's a penetration testing tool. He's got his lab activity written up at friendsandfamilytech.com/ResponderLab1. And he's got a nice write-up there, so please go check that out. He's then asked, as far as your personal learning projects go, how do you guys decide how to drink from the InfoSec fire hose? It seems like every new thing I break into has the potential to consume a lifetime in learning the details and fundamentals. Specifically, when you're learning something new, how do you decide how deep to go and then when to stop? And I thought that was a really good question, to be honest with you.
For me, it's like I'm more of a surfer. So I think there's a lot of different types. So there are people, like I have a really good friend. My best friend he's a person who's a drill down guy. He's searching all the time. He finds something new. And
he just goes on for
pursues
months.
that.
Yeah.
Oh, he pursues it for years until he's the expert. He's the guy you'll see on every bulletin board answering that weird minutia question where they're going, how do you use this solder to build it? And whatever he's interested in, he takes it until he's at the end. I'm more of a surfer. I'm a general practitioner. So my whole world revolves around being able to say a little something about everything. I'm never going to have that deep dive that he may have. So I may know, about this product, or I may know about this technique or whatever. And then I just kind of go out and gather that as I need it. So if I do need to go to a deep dive because I get a client who calls me and says, "Can you do this?" And of course as a consultant your answer is always yes, I can. And then you go dig down into that one thing. But as it is, I just try to surf across all these things.
My best advice, it plays off that very well, is that it relates to our previous segment where we're talking about running a business and what do you focus on. Think about what your own personal mission statement is, what your own goals are, and then when you look at technology, focus on those things that are going to help you achieve your goals. Right. And I think it was Josh Wright that went through this exercise, and he made us all get out these note cards, and he said, write your 5 goals for your career down on these note cards. It's a great exercise to go through. And if you do that, and then when you see all this technology, you can then focus and know where to go. But, however, it's similar to Doug's role, like I run these shows, I have a startup and all these other things going on. So, like, I somewhat have to be a generalist, but I have to be very specific about what I want to go deep dive in. So you have to align it with your goals. And so one of my goals is I have to be a general. So I have to do that kind of spreading out technology kind of thing. But I also have areas where strategically, I'm going to go deep dive into this. And that absolutely has to be something that I love. Obviously, has to have a passion for it.
Agreed.
It usually involves Linux or something geeky like that.
I'm a dilettante. So I'm somebody, I love to know a lot about a little. I mean, there's my SAT word for the day.
I like it.
And it does not involve teledildonics, I swear. there were no objects involved there. But I love to go out and learn about things. And so every new thing that comes along, because I often have students say, well, how did you learn this? And I'm like, well, yeah, they didn't have that when I was in school. We had gas-fired computers, you know. And so I want to go on and just keep learning all kinds of new things. But that doesn't leave you that luxury of saying, I'm going to sit here like my friend does and say, I'm into this, and I'm going to learn this.
I want to give others a chance to talk too, but really quick, in the previous segment they mentioned, like, I want to be like Dave Kennedy, right? And one of the things that actually Dave and I, coincidentally enough, have talked about is, like, how do we deal with all this technology and how deep do we go? And him and I both kind of said the same thing. I'm like, yeah, like, I'll research a technology, like, to a certain point, and then I'll find an expert that works for me or someone I want to hire. And I'm like, I've gotten it to this point, but my vision for that thing is to, like, go here and, like, go take what I've done and run with it. He's like, dude, I'm the same way. He's like, I'll go write the code. He's like, I'll get to a certain point, and then he's like, I know I can't spend any more time on it, but I know it's a strategic thing that we have to do. And he's like, so I'll go give it to the guys and gals that work for me, and strategically, you know, you go do this and have the vision. And I think that's when you progress from your personal career into maybe starting a business.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the things you have to do really well.
Yep.
I did that recently. We actually hired a developer as a contractor, and I've passed off some of my projects, and I'm like, this one's like really rough in my personal project, but I'll talk about after everyone else has a chance to go around. But I'm like, you know, here's what I've taken to a certain point. Here's really where I really want it to go. That gives me an exposure to the technology, which is great, but also from a business perspective allows you to accomplish those goals, and you have to build a team. So
I agree.
But I wonder if IoT is the opposite side of that coin, where, I mean, is it really necessary that products or objects become smart if we were to use smart technologies for a moment, you know, under the lens of what we're talking about? You know, does my toaster need a Facebook page? You know, does my toothbrush need to be internet connected? Because both of those things exist right now. Why does my refrigerator need a 25-inch LCD touchscreen, you know, that does up to the minute, you know, broadcasts of CNN.
Well, and Pornhub. Did you see the picture?
Sure, and
that's a great picture.
But that's
It's very important when you're getting orange juice.
That's the other side of things. Is as we become more or an
I'm
increasingly.
gonna go get orange juice from my fridge now and be really freaked out.
My mission here is accomplished.
But as we become increasingly specific and more and deep dive more into these devices, why is it that everything needs to sort of be a little bit of everything, or you know, dilettante? You know, my object, my router now is a smart router, and we have smart switches, and we have smart TVs, and we have smart refrigerators. Why does everything need to be smart?
I think this is kind of a deviation from the question, but I love it because it's something that I've actually spent probably more time than I should have thinking about. Mm-hmm. And it goes back to my interview with Ed Scotus when he talked about his smart office. And really for him, what Ed was communicating to me and what I've latched onto, and he made me realize, was that the interface for all these devices, when they become voice, we talked about Siri. Mm-hmm. Google's got the OK Google thing, which they've built in their smart thing. Mm-hmm. And Microsoft has Cortana. Amazon has the Echo.
Echo, yep. I have that too.
I truly believe that that's going to be the interface. And when you talk about all these devices being connected, when the voice is the interface, I think that's really what paints the whole picture for me. I've done a lot. My friend Pete came to me and said, people are selling these hacked Fire TV things. And he's like, what is this all about? He's like, I was going to pay someone. I'm like, dude, like, he's a friend of mine. I'm like, let me look into it first before you pay. And I'm like, they're just putting Kodi, which was XBMC, which is all Android-based. So basically, it's Linux. I'm like, dude, I got this. I got. I'm a nerd. I've been doing Linux like 20. I'm like, I got this, and I just handed him back his Fire TV, and I'm like, dude, it's not like, don't pay money for that. Like, that's ridiculous. Sure. But as I do this in my house now, and I've started to implement projects, my wife's pretty tech savvy. My kids are very tech savvy. They can figure it out. Mm-hmm. When my mom or her parents come over, it's not. I mean, they're smart individuals, obviously, but technology-wise, I'm like, yeah, you got to like the up arrow here, and then use this controller for that, and because I haven't perfected it yet.
Up, down, down, left, right.
And
left,
I'm like,
right.
yeah, exactly, like the Konami code. But I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I need to voice activate this, and then I'm gonna look at these YouTube videos, and people are like, yeah, I just say, Kodi, I want to watch a movie. And the blinds go down, the lights go down, the lights glow in the back of the TV so you can still see to get up to go to the bathroom, the movie plays, and it's all voice activated. And I think that's what really is going to drive.
I call it the Majel Barrett problem. I mean, Majel was the computer on Star Trek, and you could tell Majel anything from, I need a beer.
It was the interface on Star Trek.
It was.
Yes,
It's IoT.
Next Generation really, they used voice to control.
They did on the original, too.
In the original, too.
Yeah, because, I mean, Kirk could sit there and go, computer, I've got syphilis.
Star Trek log.
And it has McCoy come upstayes and, with a needle.
Gives him a shot.
It's
not even a needle. It's just a device. And
McCoy's the one that gave it to him, if you will.
It's pretty obvious now that Doug wanted to be a doctor. Yeah. The more I talk with Doug, the more we realize.
No, Doug wants to be McCoy. I think that's
and McCoy had the best job. He never had to go down and get killed, and he was down there in the lab with all the meperidine and stuff.
And he was like the curmudgeon. His lines to Spock were just awesome. Yeah.
Bite me, Jim, you son of a bitch.
And his nickname was Bones.
Let me bring it back to the question, right? How do you decide how deep to go and how do you decide when to stop? So I've noticed a trend in this, and I've noticed it myself. If you started in this industry 20 years ago or longer, you didn't have to specialize. There wasn't too deep to go. There
security
wasn't
was
anything
security.
there. There was one book. Good luck. You were on your own. You had to figure it out. And so a bunch of us became generalists because there wasn't any other choice. Now, trying to keep up with the generalists today, right? That's a mile wide, an inch deep. And what I'm noticing is interesting is we're all still very much generalists. I spent a good part of the early part of my career apologizing for that, oddly enough. I would say, well, I'm a master, jack of all trades, master of none. And then one day I woke up and I said, that's asinine. And I started describing myself as a Renaissance man and everything else. And it was just a mechanism by which to look at it. But here's what I've started to notice. There will come a time where you will find something that you are so passionate about, everything else kind of fades away for a little while. And that's okay. And you're going to find you're going to ride it like waves, and it's going to come and it's going to go. And that's how you figure it out. If something you're railing your head against it, there's no monetary value for you short run. It's not necessary in your job. You tried it. You got a little bit of it. Okay, move on to the next thing. But just listening to you guys talk about IoT and smart offices and smart homes and smart devices. Okay, you guys are fired up about that. So if you're listening to this and you're going, oh no, that sounds like fun to me, Kevin or anybody else, you go, oh, well, I can go spend some time with that. And then you're going to start unpacking it. You're going to look at stuff underneath it. That's going to put you down a couple rabbit holes. You're going to that's the way to do it. Don't worry about having some grand plan for it. You're either going to be naturally interested in everything, in which case I would almost spend as much time learning how to learn and come up to speed on it faster. And then know to hand off to somebody else. Or you're going to find that there's one thing. I mean, for me, it turned out to be communication and leadership. But look, that's where I spend now 80% of my time. But I still go back to, I got 20 years of generalist roots, and I stay very active in the industry broadly now. I just look at it through a different lens. And there's times I get interested in something and I chase after it.
What Michael doesn't realize that he is explaining, which I think is a great point, and I'm going to kind of extrapolate from what Michael said and say, don't worry so much about your goals, is what I heard Michael saying, and just say, go focus on things that interest you, which I think is fantastic advice. However, that has some ancillary benefits.
Sure.
Is that a SAT word?
Ancillary.
It is.
Yeah,
ancillary.
absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. I wanted to get in on there on the SAT words.
Yes.
I did terrible in my SATs, but anyway. But when you focus on something, for example, I focused on hacking WOT54G routers, right? We wrote a book on it. That was what Larry and I were passionate about. I wouldn't do a thing different. And what that gave me was this kind of insight into embedded devices that run firmware. That became a foundation. Well, now that I understand that, I can go and build on that and do some of these other things because I understand the underpinnings. We were talking before about building kernels. And how we haven't had to really compile a Linux kernel from scratch anymore, which I think is kind of a shame, to be honest with you. I think everyone should have to do that at some point in their lives. But if you focus on that, then you can take those skills and kind of build on that. And for me, it was kind of the opposite. I remember learning C and having to compile my own programs. And then when I would do more advanced Linux stuff, I'm like, oh, this is just like compiling your own C programs, and I understood headers and config, the doc configure and all that stuff, and I'm like, oh, I can compile. This is just source code. It's a lot bigger than the little programs that I was compiling.
What? Let me ask you a question about that too, because I just realized something. In the past, I've tried to learn stuff. And if I'm just learning it for the sake of learning it, it doesn't work so well. So you want to understand how DNS works. You want to understand how to set up a small network. Yeah, okay, whatever. The minute you say, I'm going to do it for real,
Oh, yeah.
Son, it's a totally different game. And I'm kind of catching that in what you guys are talking about, too. Like, when you go and you're solving a real problem, you're going to go learn about the other things, whether you like it or not. So just, do the things that are interesting, solve real problems.
I think today you can implement all of this stuff at home.
Yeah.
And, you know, I mean, years ago, like, what the story that comes to mind is, like, how I learned networking. Like, I started on token ring networking, and you can go read about token ring, and you can go try and, like, read the IBM manuals about it. But until, and this is cool, I think Michael was saying it, like, like learning when you're under pressure.
Yep.
Until you've broken the ring in a live network and had 30 developers that can't write code, and the company that I worked for, like, that's a learning experience, right? Like, you have to learn it, but you have to learn it under pressure. And I think even to extrapolate that into your home network, right? Like, if you break your internet connection or your DNS at home or your DHCP or whatever, and you're learning, like, that's a good thing to focus on.
You know, if I break my home network, so I go in and I do something to it.
Your kids are pissed.
My help desk phone lights up immediately. It's like, what the hell, Dad? You know, and it's
when
like,
I ever had to upgrade all the access points in my home network, I had some pissed off kids. I mean, as young as 3 years old, be like, Daddy, get the Wi-Fi working?
I mean, you know, it's like kids are coming out of the house with ball bats going, you're ours.
And you have teenagers, so you're like, I haven't seen you in 3 days. Like, what's going on? Well, maybe you should break the network more often.
Yeah, I could get my daughter to come talk to me that way. It's just like, Netflix is down.
Like, I black hole the Netflix.
Just have to go chill.
I guarantee you that I get a text right then. It's like, what's happened to Netflix? You know?
And Michael, spinning an educational, putting an educational spin on this, because you said you were a K-12 guy, would you apply the same prescription to K-12 with this idea of a wide breadth and less depth and scope, and not dive in so deeply to a K-12 setting, in this idea?
Yes, and I mean, what I think is fascinating is that when we work with kids, we say, hey, try a bunch of stuff. I mean, how are you going to know what you like if you don't try more things? And I'm starting to see a lot of stuff. Maybe it's just who I'm following on Facebook, but it's the bring your broken electronics into the school, let them rip it apart, bring it into the maker spaces, let them play with it. I think it's great. But I think it's the same. I think the same thing applies. I mean, I've got 4 kids, and looking at them, some of them they have some natural interests. We feed those interests. Now, I still want them to go try other things. So I think it's the same balancing act. Some of us are just bent in a particular way, or there's something that just captures us, and I think you should run with it when you get it. But not at the exclusion of everything else. So in K-12, man, we miss so many opportunities when kids are at their most intellectually curious, and as you already pointed out,
they're
fearless. Like, you say to me, can you spin this up in 72 hours and go get funding for it? I go, oh, no way. Kids go, yeah, let me make 5 phone calls.
I kind of fear with the way the educational environment is set up now. Like, my full disclosure, my 8-year-old, right? We signed them up for, I'll give them a plug, the Sylvan Learning Center. It's right down the street from our house.
I know that,
They've got some programming classes. They've got ones that are a little more in depth, like it's once a week for 6 weeks, and they've got other ones that are like workshops. They have ones in robotics and this other thing, but it gives them the luxury where. Because we can afford to pay for it, which is my point. He can go try robotics for an afternoon, see if he likes it. He can go try some other kind of game programming. He's in a game programming class now, which is, of course, I think it's fantastic. I hope it's something that he likes. He says that he likes it, so we'll keep doing it. But we have to pay extra. And it's not cheap for that stuff.
Which brings up the digital divide, which was a big thing in the 90s, which seems to be resurfacing again now. Because
why isn't that stuff in school? Like, he can stay after school and take chorus. Like, he does chorus.
Right, that's what I did,
part of the school like, why isn't, to Michael's point, I think, is... Like, why can't they stay after school and do robotics?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is because it's expensive. Chorus is cheap. Go in there and sing. It's cheap, and there's a plethora of people. Another SAT word. A plethora of people who can teach that, and it's not to demean them, but there's more people in that field who are willing to do that because they don't have a lot of other options.
Well, no, the school has budget for a music teacher.
Well,
why doesn't the school have budget for a computer program?
That's a slippery slope, because then you start turning from STEM to STEAM to STREAM and then back to STEM again.
But it's happening. I mean, you saw that. I mean, in Rhode Island, the governor passed this thing that I'm on this governor's commission called CS4 Rhode Island, and they basically mandated that all the schools would have some sort of computer science in their curriculum. I didn't like that. that. I didn't want it to be called computer science. I wanted it to be called technology. Because I don't like the idea that we focus so heavily on, let's develop programming languages. Right. You know, I mean that old school stuff. Right. But at least it's something. And you're starting to see that emerge, and you're going to these schools now, and there's a teacher who's assigned to technology. Yep. My daughter's school has, you know, they have a person who teaches robotics and teaches computer science and all these kind of things. So that's slowly happening. It just hasn't happened yet because it's expensive to get people. I mean, to get me to quit my job at the university and go teach at a high school, which would never ever happen. Well, for
a lot of reasons.
Yeah. Other than salary, stuff probably, I can't get into it. It's just like they're just 500 feet and you know all this and that. Yeah, no, we can't get into that. But I mean, but at the end of the day, that's really what it's all about. It's a slow process, and changing that rigid nature of academics, which is unfortunate, but it's the way it is just something it's hard to do. Because when you go to these schools and you say you've got to do this, they say, what would you like me to cut? There's only so many hours in a day. Yeah. Do I cut music for computer science? And of course, I'm going, yeah, although I like music too. And like, how about why don't you cut that? You know, I won't say anything.
Can't we cut February vacation?
Yeah, sure.
Or instead of studying history through some stupid, ridiculous 400-page textbook, give them Civ 4 and let them, you know, simulate what would happen.
Let me just offer a different thing though, because we have a lot of people who pay attention to this, and so I'm apparently big on looking at stuff from a completely different way, which I guess makes me just like a child but bigger size, and so. What I've started doing is I go to the schools and I say, does the community ever offer to help you on this stuff? And they go, yeah, all the time. I go, what do they say? They go, how do we help? And they go, right. And what do you say? They go,
we don't,
I don't know.
Exactly.
And so then I go to the community and I go, if I could give you an opportunity to come in and help with the robotics club. Now, listen, I need you guys to sponsor it a little bit because I got to buy the robots. They're $400 a piece. But is that something you guys would be interested in? And they always say yes. And I go, cool. Well, is that, then how come you're not doing it? They go, because no one's ever asked us.
Exactly.
So when we look at this and we talk about digital divide, we talk about everything else, it's all true, except for nobody's actually looking at it in a way that says, hi, I have a background in computers and robotics, and I will, instead of buying the new iPhone Plus 256 and the new everything else, Apple, and the really cool headphones, I'm going to, and I'm not mocking you.
No, I understand what you're saying.
Other than I just met you.
Yes, you are.
I mean, yeah, I guess
I can take it.
But it's just because you made it easy.
Yep, that's fine.
But, the point is, there's enough places in the community where if you showed them that it was for the children so the terrorists don't win, wave a flag, they'll throw some cash on the table. And there's some people there that will help out. But what we're not good at is asking. We're not good at casting that vision and giving people that pathway to say, hey, you want to be part of this? I'd love for you to be part of that. And and so I'm going to add one more dimension then to the question that Kevin asked. How do you know what's enough? How do you know how to go too deep? I'll tell you what, if there's something that you're really interested in, go to one of the schools and ask around. And don't just ask once. Ask around and say, this is something I'm really interested in. And I was looking to set up my own lab at the house. I'll tell you what if I worked with you guys, we set up a lab, and I could come once or twice a week after school, and I'll work with you guys on this type of stuff. That's a very different approach.
And I think that's coming around. And I'm gonna. The other piece of it's the same thing we were talking about in the earlier segment about being able to sell it. Part of it is administrators and other people don't really understand all this, and we're all very passionate about it. So we go rushing in and we go, look, I can show you how to set up this Bluetooth-enabled network that's got an infrared connection, and then they're going, oh my God, because all they hear is dollar signs. And so I think we have to use those same sales techniques that you guys are talking about to sell your startup to a venture capital funding person to go to a school and talk to an administrator about it. Russ and I are going to do a new show. On this very network.
That's right.
Unless the FCC finds out. And
no, we're totally unregulated by the FCC.
So you think.
The new show is called Secure Digital Life.
That's right.
It's going to be awesome.
And Russ and I wanted to just be able to start talking about some of these very deep dive issues that you guys talk about on a more basic level, general practitioner level, to people out there. So maybe we can get some viewers like that who could tune into some of those episodes and say, oh, Doug and Russ were talking about setting up a network at the school. Maybe if they see that, they get a little more comfortable with how that works and how it costs and how it could be done. And that makes your sales pitch easier when you do go into these things. And then Cyber Patriot is the same way. Cyber Patriot helps because it brings kids and mentors and industry people all together, and they start asking the right questions of their administrators, and the teacher goes in and goes, all we really need here is a tomato router and an old computer. you know, and they're going, well, how much would that cost? They go, it won't cost anything. You just have to sign this paper and approve it, and we're in business, you know, and then boom, there it is. And all of a sudden there's a school with a great networking program, and it's amazing how you see that happen.
Yeah, and that's a risk of driving too far into it, because I'm very active involved in that part to it. So if you get the teacher to buy in, you got to get the administrator to buy in. There might be somebody else or board level to get buy into it, and just make sure you bring the parents into it. And so my only point on that is, when you're building your communication plan, everybody assumes it's always one of those. The answer is yes, it's all of them. And if you can explain to them clearly the benefit to their child or to the student, and how it will not detract from the needs of the school, it will not overburden the teacher, it will not increase liability. So the point is, I'm excited about the show you guys are going to do, and if this is something you're interested in, reach out and we'll help you. And if it doesn't go right the first time, don't worry, like, we'll get it dialed in.
Yeah. What's interesting is I think the way to bridge some of those gaps is, when I help my son with his homework, like, sometimes I draw parallels too. I'm like, well, this is like computer engineering, right? Like, some of the stuff is really applicable. Yeah. And if you can kind of sell it as like, this is going to help you with math, and this is going to help you with computers, and vice versa, like, the two really are similar at that level. I think more similar. When you get into more advanced, I think they start to really diverge. But at the more basic levels, I think there's really a lot of parallels. And if you can sell it to the parents, as we're talking about, as if they do computers, help them with math, and the math will help them with computers, I think that's important. Yeah, that's super, and not just, and there's other subjects too. I think science is certainly one as well.
All those are the pipeline. You have to get people started young, and you send them all the way through, and then they're coming out of college and taking jobs and working with you guys and going to these conferences, and that's where the next generation of people come from. My whole thing is
get students to start sooner learning this stuff, science specifically, computers specifically. I think are started too late. And that, I think, also speaks to Kevin's question, is like, start early. You know, like, wherever you are in your career, and wherever you're in your learning process, like, you're probably already too late to start it. Like, go.
No, hold on, though. Because the history is littered with people who started in their 40s and 50s, people who hit 38 and changed their whole career trajectories, people at 60 that said, you know what, I got an idea and I never chased it and I did it. So, you know, we admire the people who had their gumption at 20 and it lucked out and they kicked ass. But, you know, we put them on a pedestal, but they're not the normal. So while you're right, if you've got kids, start them early, start them often, support them. But if it's you, please don't sell yourself.
And I agree with your point, Michael. It's never too late to start either.
Yeah, it's never too late to start. I mean, most of us have reinvented ourselves. At least me, I'm the oldest person here. I've reinvented myself so many.
A lot too.
Yeah, I know, it's sad. But, you know, it's like, you know, whatever. But way back, you know, during the Hoover administration.
It's funny how that's style again.
But I mean, literally, reinvent yourself if you need to. And you can always do that in technology, because the resources are there now. Yes. You can jump on there and say, I want to learn to be a C programmer. You can start doing that today. Absolutely. I mean, go out there right now.
And the resources available today are so much greater than when I read Kernighan, which the book is right there. Kernighan and Ritchie.
Okay, here's what I got.
That was the only resource back then, to learn C.
I got one. I needed an operating system manual for an IBM mainframe in like 1978, and they would not give it to you. I called them, and they wouldn't let you have it. And I got my dad to take me to this tour, and I went out there, and I sneaked away from the tour and got one from the engineers. And then he's like, that was the internet of 1978.
That's actually a really cool story. That's actually a really cool story, Doug, I have to say. But contrast that to today, where you can go online and learn Linux and Python and all that stuff. So there's no excuse today.
No.
If you're young, go learn it. As Michael was saying, if you're not young, if you're not in elementary school, it's still there. Go
hit
learn
Google.
it.
It's there. I mean, I tell my students that all the time. I mean, students come in and they go, how can I learn this? It's another thing we don't teach in the curriculum. I'm like, you know that thing called Google? You just go in there and type it. I want to learn.
Okay, Google.
It's like half of it's porn sites, but the rest of them are probably useful. And then, you know.
I'm an Android user, Russell. I don't know. I made the convert. I still have a Mac laptop. I know. I'm actually thinking of switching over to a Dell XPS 13 developer edition, going Linux.
After you just got done talking about how you got your fancy new headset and you don't need connections anymore, Apple knew what you were going to do, Paul.
I know. I'm thinking
it's not too late.
My desktop is still Apple.
Siri knows what you're thinking, and she just heard all that.
Well, Kevin, thanks for writing in. I think we answered your question and a lot of other questions in this segment. So with that, we're going to take a short break. We covered all the bases. We're going to come back and talk about the security news for this week.